Jeg heter Ingunn Juliussen og ønsker deg velkommen til Inside Israel fra Internasjonale kristne ambassade Jerusalem. Israel er en havn for det jødiske folk. Samtidig er landet også et fristed for den kristne arabiske befolkningen. Dessverre er det ikke slik i nabolandene. I dagens program setter vi fokus på forfølgelse av kristne i Midtøsten.
Welcome to Word from Jerusalem. On today's program, we're dealing with a very urgent and serious issue, and that is the Muslim persecution of Christians here in the Middle East. The world has been shocked by the brutality of the Islamic State terror militia, especially as it has targeted the ancient Christian communities of Iraq and Syria. These radical jihadists have swept into Christian towns and villages and committed horrible atrocities. Christian men, women, and children have been hung, beheaded, and even crucified. And without someone coming to their rescue, they feel more and more abandoned. But to really understand the enormity of this ongoing tragedy, we need to go back to the birth of the Christian faith here in this region 2,000 years ago. And that story, of course, begins here in Jerusalem, where Jesus was crucified, buried, and resurrected, and here on Mount Zion in the upper room where the church was born in fire on the day of Pentecost.
Centuries ago, the Middle East was the cradle of Christianity. After the church was born in the land of Israel in the 1st century, it quickly spread throughout the region. Within 300 years, nearly half the population of the Middle East professed faith in Jesus. Alexandria in Egypt was a great center of Christian learning. There were churches in nearly every town and village in Lebanon, Syria, Iraq, and beyond. Even the Arabian Peninsula was 50% Christian. But this all changed with the rise of Islam in the 7th century. Inspired by the Prophet Muhammad, the Islamic conquest came sweeping out of the Arabian desert and within a few short years had engulfed the entire Middle East and North Africa. Millions of Christians were forced to convert to Islam or die. Many Christians abandoned their homes and churches and fled for their lives.
Now, when the Muslim armies reached the gates of Jerusalem in 637 AD, it was still the center of Christianity. So it was a great prize for the followers of Muhammad to capture the holy city of the rival Christian faith. Yet it was here that the Muslims offered the Christians another option. Under the Treaty of Sophronius, the Christians could continue to practice their faith so long as they agreed to live as second-class citizens under Muslim domination. This system lasted for centuries and came to be known as dhimitude in reference to their diminished status.
Under this oppressive system, Muslims considered themselves superior to Christians because they followed a superior faith. Thus, they believed they had a divine right to rule over the inferior Christians. Under the dhimmi system, Christians could not ride horses like Muslims. No church could be taller than a mosque. A Muslim testifying in court was considered more credible than a Christian witness. And Christians had to pay a special head tax called the jizya, which was basically a form of extortion to pay protection money.
Yet despite all the oppression they faced, many Christians in Arab lands clung to their faith and managed to survive for many centuries under Muslim dominance. Even as recently as 100 years ago, nearly 20% of the Middle East was still Christian. But with the breakup of the Ottoman Empire following World War I, the region has seen a succession of conflicts. Many Christians have fled, and some of the region's proud historic churches have been reduced to small remnants. Here we are in the Armenian quarter of the old city of Jerusalem, where many Armenian Christians sought refuge 100 years ago to escape the Ottoman genocide against their people. In recent years, the Christian exodus from the Middle East has accelerated once again due to the violence and chaos of the Arab Spring. Radical Muslims have targeted Christians because they're unarmed and thus more vulnerable to attack. The jihadists have bombed churches and burned Christian villages. And the worst place for Middle East Christians in recent years has been in Iraq and Syria.
When the United States led an invasion of Iraq to topple Saddam Hussein in 2003, the resulting chaos left the Christian community open to attack once more. The radical Islamists viewed the local Christians as collaborators with the Crusader West. The Al-Qaeda terror militia demanded that Christians start paying the jizya head tax again. When they refused, 5 churches in Baghdad were bombed on one Sunday alone.
The Islamic extremists in Al-Qaeda make clear that their goal was to drive all Christians from Iraq. So over the past decade, the Iraqi Christian population has dwindled from over 1.5 million believers to less than 300,000. Many Christians fled to neighboring Syria, but then the Syrian civil war broke out and the Christians are being targeted once again. Just when it seemed there was no place else for them to flee, we have the rise of the Islamic State terror militia, which has been the most brutal of all.
When ISIS forces swept across the border into Iraq this summer, they targeted the last Christian stronghold in the country. In a few short weeks, they chased the last 300,000 Christians from the Nineveh plain along the Tigris River above Mosul. This had been their homeland for thousands of years, all the way back to Jonah the prophet.
One of the key eyewitnesses to the ongoing tragedy in Iraq is Canon Andrew White, who is also lovingly known as the Vicar of Baghdad. He's a courageous Anglican cleric who has pastored a church in the Iraqi capital for the past decade. And recently, at the Christian Embassy's annual Feast of Tabernacles celebration here in Jerusalem, he shared about his experiences in Iraq. Here's part of what he had to say.
My people are broken. Yesterday I was speaking at one of the Messianic gatherings in Carmel. And as I was going up to speak, I got a message on my dreaded BlackBerry. It said, ISIS, the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, has just gone into Al-Qush. They went in the day before and they said to a man, you've got to convert to Islam, otherwise we'll kill your children. He phoned me later. He said, Abuna, Abuna, my father, I said those words. How could I say them? But I could never see my children killed. Will Jesus stop loving me? I said, no, Jesus will never stop loving you. ISIS went into the children the next morning in another house. And they said, you must denounce Jesus now and follow Muhammad. And all the children, they are my children, they said, we can never stop following Yeshua. He has always loved us. We have always loved him, and we will never stop. And they held each other's hands, and they were all killed. That was yesterday morning. That is what is happening to our people.
Canon White also spoke at our feast press conference about what Iraqi Christians are facing.
I used to have a church of 6,500 people. Many of them have now fled. There are more Iraqi Christians in Chicago than there are in Iraq. And there are many in Sweden and Canada, and we're thankful for those countries who have given our people hostage, who have enabled them to be refugees. But what is happening in Iraq is terrible. Our people are being killed and massacred, and ISIS are there on the doorstep. We have moved with the Christians who have moved in towards Kurdistan, and we are having to feed literally thousands upon thousands of people every day.
In light of the brutal persecution which Middle East Christians are facing, the Christian Embassy recently decided to speak out more forcefully on their behalf. We launched an historic initiative with several Jewish and Christian organizations to send a joint letter to 120 world leaders to demand that they take greater action to defend Christians in this region and stop the persecution against them. Here are two Christian signers of that letter, Dr. Jürgen Buehler, the director of the International Christian Embassy, and Dr. Billy Wilson of the Empowered 21 Global Movement.
It's indeed, I think, a historic moment today where for the first time, to my knowledge, in modern history, probably even in the history of Jewish-Christian relations, a Jewish organization and a Christian organization are joining in a letter to protect Christians in the Middle East. And it's indeed very exciting for us to see the leadership of Mr. Ronald and the World Jewish Congress in this issue. Last year when Mr. Lauder was speaking at the Feast of Tabernacles, it was a speech which was standing out from the many speeches which we heard in many years in the Feast of Tabernacles, where we saw for the first time a Jewish leader not being concerned only about the issue of the Jewish people and the state of Israel, but showed an equal concern about the Christian community in the Middle East. And Mr. Lauder, I want to thank you personally for this initiative and for your courage to speak out and to take a clear stand for our communities here in the Middle East. And it's a privilege for us to partner with him and also together with Empowered 21, which is a growing movement around the world. Some of you might know that the Pentecostal charismatic movement is the fastest growing religious group on our planet. They grew in the last 100 years from a small revival movement in Los Angeles today to a staggering number of 600 million Christians. And Dr. Wilson, who is with us today, the president of ORU, is as chairman or president of Empowered 21, probably the strongest representative of those 600 million Pentecostal/charismatic Christians around the world. And I believe it's really a historic moment today to see this joint statement coming out here from the city of Jerusalem. Thank you so much.
We are honored to stand with Ambassador Lauder and Dr. Buehler in the signing of this letter to make a concerted and united cry to political leaders around the world to stand up and do something to stop what we see as one of the tragedies of the 21st century. We are witnessing in our day some of the greatest atrocities to religious freedom and personal freedom perhaps ever witnessed in the world. Christians and Jews through the ages have all suffered persecution. So I'm not surprised that this issue brings us together in a unique way, and I'm glad that it has. I want to say a special thanks to Ambassador Lauder from believers around the world for stepping out and making this statement. It's unusual, it is historic, and it is unique.
Finally, Ambassador Ronald Lauder, the president of the World Jewish Congress, also joined us in speaking out on behalf of the embattled Christian communities of the Middle East. Here he is speaking to a large Christian audience at the embassy's Feast of Tabernacles gathering in Jerusalem.
Since I saw you last year, the terror against Christians and Jews has only increased. And as I travel around the world over the past 12 months, I am now convinced that we must join forces. A Jewish-Christian coalition makes complete sense. Together, Christians and Jews must speak as one and tell the world, no more discrimination, no more terror, no more death, and no more silence. We have also seen a bone-chilling rise in anti-Semitism this summer. Things that we have not seen or heard in Europe since World War II. Horrible, disgusting lies about Jews that sound just like the Nazis. We see this in Belgium, in France, in Hungary, and sadly even in Germany. This summer looked more like 1938 than 2014. And you know that the same people who go after us are also going after you. That is why Christians and Jews must join forces and act together. We must always remember our shared values and our shared past. Today, Christians and Jews are together as one. Together, we will find strength. Yes, we will be courageous. This message is my call to arms. First, no more silence. Raise your voices. Speak out. Speak out against anti-Semitism. Speak out against anti-Christian terror. Tell the truth about Israel and what has happened to Christians in the Middle East. No more lies. No more lies. No more lies. Just the truth. When you leave Jerusalem and go back to your homes, you must speak out. Speak out in your churches. Speak out in the newspapers and on television, radio, and internet. Take to the streets with marches and demonstrations. There are over 4,000 people in this room and millions more watching on television. Everyone hearing my voice right now must act. Everyone must speak out. Our enemy has shown his face with its rapes, with its slaughter of Christian women and children, and with his beheadings. These are barbarians we read about in the Bible. They are as bad as anything we have seen, and they must be stopped. In Paul's second letter to Timothy, he wrote, God did not give us the spirit of fear, but the spirit of power. That is exactly what we say in the Torah. We must not be afraid. We must find strength. This doesn't come from the President of the World Jewish Congress. It comes from a higher being. Do not fear. Have courage. Have strength. And as one, Christians and Jews, we will be strengthened together. And we will. We will not fail. Thank you, and God bless every one of you. Shalom. Thank you.
Now, it's quite remarkable for a prominent Jewish leader like Ronald to speak out on behalf of endangered Christians here in the Middle East. And that's what makes this such an historic initiative. And we need Christians like you to join your voice in defending the embattled Christians of this region. Tell your nation's leaders that the Muslim persecution of Christians must stop. Also, we need you to pray for these precious believers in Jesus who face daily threats to their lives.
Du kan bli delaktig i Bibelens kall om å velsigne Israel. Gjennom den kristne ambassaden kan du bringe praktisk omsorg og kjærlighet til denne nasjonen. For 300 kroner kan du ta del i arbeidet vårt og motta vår avis 11 ganger i året. Send en SMS med ICEJ til 2030 og bli med på laget. En stor takk til alle dere som støtter oss. Takk også til dere som følger oss på Facebook og deler våre saker. Sammen gjør vi en forskjell. Da vi kommet til veis ende. Takk for i dag.
To see several thousand, 4,000 or 5,000 people from 80 different countries all over the world, to be supporting in one unified body of Christians for Israel is probably one of the most amazing experiences one could ever be a part of.
When you come, you have a very special experience and you will never forget about it.
We as Christians and all the way from the Pacific Islands want to show Israel and the people, all the Jews, that we are here, praying for them, standing with them as much as we can.
I would welcome you to come here because once you're here, you'll have to return time and time again.
You will not regret coming to the feast. It is the most incredible thing I have been a part of. It'll blow you away. You will leave full, refreshed, a heart for God, a heart for His people, a heart for what He's doing in the earth. It will transform your life forever.
Every effort you have had is worth it because there is no explanation to what you receive when you return.
We've had some awesome moments in the desert at En-Gedi and the Dead Sea, and then we're in the arena right now, and it's been some awesome moments with God in the presence, with people from all around the world gathering together. And there's such an atmosphere of Jesus in this place, and we want you to feel that and sense that. We want you to come and visit us. We love you, and we hope to see you soon at Feast 2016.